If you're joining me today, that probably means that you're not happy with the way that Ableton Live organizes your plugins. Now, Ableton does provide some features in order to help you to organize things, right? So you get your favorites collections over here, and you can put plugins, you can put pretty much any different asset that you might want to put in here. So loops, samplers, it could be lots of various different things. But the problem is that you don't really have enough of them, in my opinion, right? I've got lots of different plugins that do lots of things, and trying to organize them using the favorites just wasn't doing it for me. So in the past, what we've done with our VST plugins, our VST2 plugins, was pretty simple, right? We would go into the plugin folder, which I'll show you here. And then we would just create some subfolders and we move the plugins into those folders. So I've recently installed a VST2 plugin called Tape-201, tape delay. And all I needed to do in this case is just drag it and drop it into that folder. The next time we start Ableton Live, it'll then put that into one of these subfolders, right? And we've got these nicely organized. But unfortunately, with VST3, what we would get is it would organize them by the vendor, the software developer's name. And that's fine, if you're using certain plugin suites like Artura or Native Instruments, Waves, right? Because then you kind of knew where you were going for specific things. But there's lots of free plugins out in the world. There's lots of different software vendors, and it really kind of makes it a bit challenging to find the plugin that you need in the moment because you've really got to memorize, okay, what's the name of the plugin that I want? Who's the software vendor? So I decided to look for some solutions on how to correct this. So there's a lot of confusion as to what this browser really is. A lot of people think that it's a file browser because when you go into areas like, in your loop sections that you add, you can see all the WAV files and you can preview those. But really what this is it's actually a database that is powering all of this. And that is why in certain cases when you add things to Ableton, while it's running, like if you add new folders or files into these folders, it won't find it until the next time. It's because when it goes through, it's going to scan for changes, and when it sees those changes, then it adds in after the fact, but it's not constantly doing that. So keeping in mind that this is a database is really important because that's what we're going to need to do. We're going to need to edit the database in order to create these custom categories. So if you see here, you're in my VST3 folder. I've got some Artura plugins. Delay is the one that we're going to be working on today. And then we've got a bunch of other plugins, right, categories. So I've created one for noise retro. I've put it under my atmospheres FX section. I've got compressors in here, all my various different compressors across the different software developers. Delays coming again, different developers, right? I've got Native Instruments. I got Chow DSP over here. Distortions, and all of these things work, of course, right? I can easily just drag them and drop them into any channel just like I normally would. They pop up, it's not a problem. But I will say that, I can't promise you that every single piece of software is going to work properly like this. So, your results may differ from mine. I've only looked at plugins coming from a handful of developers. And there's always those ones who kind of do things a bit different, and these things don't really work out that well for them. But I think you should be fine. There are going to be some things that you're going to want to follow when you go through here. So in order to update this database, and this is a SQLite database, so it's a file format of a database, and it's very basic. It's super common. A lot of people who do a lot of development work use this for prototyping, but it's also really good for these sorts of situations where you need something that you can access like a database, but you don't really want to run the database software in the background and eat up a lot of resources. So this is a really super common way for developers to give database functionality in their applications. And in order to edit this database, right? So let me show you just so that you can see here. You go into my VST3 folder. I haven't changed anything, right? You can see it's just one big dump of all my different VST3 plugins. I haven't changed anything. It's very different than my VST2 folder. So that's not how I changed it, but I'm going to show you in a second how I did change it, right? So the Ableton Live database is going to be stored in a different place if you're on Windows. Sorry, I don't have a Windows machine set up right now to take a quick look at this. So I'll rely on you to do some work to figure out where they store this. But at least on Mac OS, this is going to be in underneath my library folder associated with my user account. So you see here, this is the root of my hard drive, right? See, it's my root drive there. And in there, I've got my users folder. This is my profile folder, that's Dusty. And then in Dusty, I've got this library folder, and that's a lot of the resources, right? The applications and all of the different resources that your applications will need to run. And under this, we have application support, and this is where Ableton stores the application resources that it uses. There's a few places that it does this, but this is the one that we're going to be looking for. And you see here we've got live database, and then you can see the live DB file. So I'm going to close Ableton Live. This is a really important part of this, so we're going to close it. And you'll see these two files disappear in a second. And I'm going to copy this file, right? I'm going to copy it because I'm going to make a change here, and if I mess up, I want to have a really easy way to restore that database so that I don't have to rescan everything. So I've just got a temp directory. I made a really quick copy of there, so I just did a Control-C, Control-V to make that copy. Now I'm going to go back into my application support, go back into Ableton. We'll see that database there, right? And we can see that my database is about 552 megabytes. I got a lot of stuff in there, right? And that's a lot of text being held for like every single file that I have, every single plugin. And then I'm using an application to edit the file, but there's a lot of these different SQL IDEs that you can use. So SQL, simple query language, is a type of database. It's a relational database, and this file is based on that. So I'm going to open that database. I'm going to navigate back to that same file that I just showed you. So we're going to go into users. We're going to go to Dusty. We're going to go to library. We're going to go to application support under Ableton, and then the database. So I'm going to open this Ableton Live database. You see that open there. And we are going to go to the browse data, and I'm going to go to plugins. Now what you can see here, this is what's populating that side browser window. And what I've done is I've gone through and I've changed the vendor name. So let's sort this by name, and you can see Arturo's at the very top. And then all I did was I clicked into here, and you see now I can edit that cell. I'm going to type in FX delay. Oop, I should type that correctly. And I'm going to apply that. And now what I've done is where instead of it being organized by the vendor, I'm just changing the vendor name so that I can create my categories. Now, interestingly enough, let's say that you've got, and this is something that you can't normally do with Ableton Live, so this is a bit of a hack, but it's not anything that's going to cause you a problem. But let's just say that we've got some applications, we get some plugins that, you know, they don't really neatly fit into one category or another, right? Let's go and pick maybe something that is I should have, oh, okay. So here's a good example. I've got Orb Chords, right, which is an AI application, and I'm putting it as MIDI. But let's just say that I wanted to have a different category. What I can do here, I've got this feature that I can duplicate this record in this row. So I'll do that. And now under this, I can change that and I'll say this is going to be AI, let's just say music generation, right? I'm going to get rid of this so it doesn't really matter, but we can do that just to show you that this works. Now, what I need to do in order to make these changes take effect, all I have to do is I got to go and I'm going to save that file. So I'm going to write the changes and then I'm going to close the database. This type of file, if you leave it open in this application here and you don't close it, it actually locks the file. So when you try to open up Ableton Live again, it's just going to hang because the database file is locked and it can't read it. So now I'm going to reopen Ableton Live. It's just going to take a moment. You see here it's going through the scanning process. So that scanning process is actually where it looks for changes. And what I believe it's doing is it's probably just doing kind of a naive check first. It's looking at maybe the top level folder and seeing if there's a flag in the metadata of that folder that will say if there's been anything changed in there. And if it does, then it's probably triggering the scan. That would be my guess. But if it doesn't see that, then it's gonna not do anything. So now we've taken, if you look here under the Artura, the delay is gone, right? And now we can find that delay right here, delay tape 201. So I've categorized that, and you can see here under my MIDI, I've got my orb chords. It's just put one of those out there so you can see that this loads up with no problem. And it's just going to take a moment to load. There we go. Now that's loaded up. We can close it, and I can go in and load it from here too. So now I'm going to have, and it loaded up much faster, right? So there's some sort of caching going on there. So you can see here I've got two different channels, both of them with orb chords, and I just kind of pulled them from different places, but ultimately it's all pulling it from that same VST3 folder. So that's really all that you need to do in order to create your custom categories, and now you can organize your plugins the way that makes the most sense for your workflow. Hopefully Ableton will one day change this. It's been a long time since they've had it set up this way, and I know that people have been unhappy with this for quite a while, especially once VST3 came out, this became a bigger issue. And I get it, that somebody made a decision to say that we want to promote the developers and make sure that people understand who they are. And I don't disagree with that, but their implementation just kind of got in the way of the workflow a bit. And hopefully this will help you guys in the same way that it's helped me. Good luck, and hope you go make some great music.